Okay, well, speaking of money, this is something that we could wrap up the conversation on Brad Treliving with just some of the signings that he's made while he's been the general manager of the Flames. So I wanted to talk about some of the good, some of the bad, and then just some of the UFA deals that we haven't seen play out all the way through. So I'll start with the good. He signed a few RFAs. Gaudreau, Monahan, Backlund, Lindholm, Hamilton, Hanifin, Brody, and Anderson. All of those players were signed between 5 and 7 years, all for less than $7 million apiece. So obviously the range between those players isn't drastic, but there is a range there. So to get them for under $7 million on those mid to longish term deals, I think was a pretty good thing for Treliving, and he was able to convince those players to stay for at least that period of time. In terms of RFAs, though, I have two bad signings that I wanted to bring up. Matthew Tkachuk, the 3x7 bridge. To get him at that $7 million price tag, he had to shave off a couple years. So that's why he did the 3-year deal. And we saw that after those 3 years, Tkachuk said, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, so why don't you trade me? And then his hand was forced. So I didn't love the 3 years on that. And same with Andrew Mangiapane, 3x5.8. So same kind of thing. After those 3 years are up, maybe Mangiapane says, hey, I'm out of here. I can go get $10 million somewhere else or whatever it is. I don't know what the cap's going to be like, and I don't know how many years he has left. He might have 1 or 2 left on that deal. Right. So, but those were the two that I pointed to as kind of bad deals for RFAs. Any thoughts on those, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, with the hindsight that we have, of course, you would have liked to have seen Matthew Tkachuk locked up for longer. And I think there's a somewhat comparable situation here that the Leafs are going to be dealing with, which is, which I'm sure we'll get into more. But I'll speak of Austin Matthews, who signs for 5 years, and you've walked him right into his UFA year. And now you see the power he holds. And Tkachuk, while not necessarily walking into a UFA situation like Matthews is, still you see the cards that he played and the power that he believed he possessed and ultimately did, because he forced a trade out of there. That came back to bite them a little bit. Of course, you don't know what the alternative was if he said, okay, I'll do 8 years, but you got to give me X. Right. So it'd be nice if we had that information. Yeah. I would agree. Like that term is just it obviously didn't work out. And that kind of plays into the other guys in the good category that you've mentioned. Yeah. Those guys all between 5 and 7 years, which is, you're getting good term at less than $7 million AAVs, which is generally good value, of course, depending on the guys. But those are all, the names you've listed out, whether it's Gaudreau or Monahan or Backlund or Hamilton, Hanifin, so on and so forth. Those are all guys who are core pieces, and have been guys at certain periods of time, different periods of time that you've been able to build around. So you want to build a program where you convince people that they should stick around, that they should stay. And going into this offseason with the Leafs, even though the situation is a little bit different and these guys being upcoming UFAs hold a lot more power, and Matthews and Nylander in particular, it's the same thing. You want to make sure that these are guys who want to be here for the long term. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you sign Matthews to a 3-year deal at X amount of money, and now you're just walking him into an even bigger contract next time, and you got to do this all over again. There's benefits to staying shorter and to doing talking about guys who are coming off an ELC, doing a bridge deal. But when you have a sure thing, which of course Austin Matthews is, you want that certainty. And, you certainly want the certainty if the cap is going up a lot, where what he's going to be locked into. You can plan your future, and you're not dealing with a situation where in 5 years he's coming to you asking for $18 million a year, right? Yeah, well, I mean, this season the cap is projected to go up by only $1 million. Gary said that the other day. Next summer, people are expecting a pretty big number, around $5 million, and then the season after that, another $5 million. That's the projection right now on Cap Friendly as of about a week ago when I checked. So if that were to happen, I would expect Matthews
would want to sign a shorter deal so he can cash in. But we're going to get into that when we talk about some of the biggest questions facing Brad Treliving here. Just going through some of his signings, and this will wrap up our conversation on Treliving's history. Here are some UFA deals that he signed. I've ranked them 1 through 9 in terms of total AAV. So I want to go through them, and I want you to just give me a letter grade on each signing. And this dates back to 2015.
Sure.
Okay. Jonathan Huberdeau, 8 times 10.5 in 2022.
I'm going to go with a B. Of course, we're a year into to Huberdeau's stint, 0 years into this contract, but he had never played in Calgary before. And you committed to him a year in advance of when you needed to commit to him without having seen any of that history there. Season wasn't very good, but I'm not going to go lower than a B because I do think he'll rebound.
Fair enough. Paying him until he's 38, I believe.
It's a long time.
So we'll see what happens there. A lot gets made of the John Tavares contract. Yeah. He's up when he's 34, I believe, 35
2 years
maybe.
From now,
yeah. So again, it's not extremely comparable, but it's worth mentioning in a Toronto podcast here. So number 2, Mackenzie Weegar, 8 times 6.25 in 2022.
I'll go with a B plus. I think it's heavy on term for sure. Mm-hmm. That's my one knock, but it's at a solid cap number, 6.25 for a guy who's a really good player and hopefully is a really good player for a long time. But yeah, similar to what I said on Huberdeau, you're committing a lot to a guy that's not necessarily proven in your market and for over 8 years. I think that one has the potential to look pretty good down the road, so long as Weegar continues to play as well as he has in the past, especially in Florida. And if you have a guy making 6.25 on your top pairing, that's pretty nice. A lot of those guys go for much higher, so I can't knock that one too much. But for me, it's just the term, so I'm going to go B plus.
Yeah, I'm the same. I like the number, not so much the term. Probably had to give the term to get him at that number, so it's you've got to give and take here with these kinds of deals.
Yeah.
We'll rapid fire a bit here. Nazem Kadri, 7 times 7 again in 2022.
This one hurts a little because I do love Kadri, but I'm going to go C plus, and I'm just going to say, you know what, I understand it partly in the sense that he gives you a lot more depth, that he is a UFA and held a lot of the cards, but you gave a lot of term and a lot of money to a guy who's coming off a career season, and this is not a guy. It's not a career season in the sense he had 115 points like Jonathan Huberdeau, but it's a career season for a guy who's otherwise been a 30-goal, 50 to 60-point guy.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, apologies if he's crept over that number a little bit. And he's a year into it. He was fine this year. He was okay, but 5 years from now, is he going to be a $7 million player? I'm just not convinced of that.
Yeah.
So that's one where, if there's anything on this board where I'm looking, I'm saying, okay, who's a guy who, in year 5 of his contract, maybe year 6 is a bio candidate. That may be one, but I'll cut Brad Treliving some slack in the sense that sometimes your feet get held to the fire a little bit when it comes to UFAs, but the key is to not let that happen to you,
right? The argument is always made too, if GM X didn't make this deal, GM Y would have made the same deal and maybe even paid more. So it's hard to look at some of these deals in hindsight and say, oh, that was bad, because at the time some teams may have wanted to pay this player more, so it's hard to judge in that sense. But 7 times 7, coming off of a career year, playing for the best team in the league, who won the Stanley Cup, it's kind of tough.
There was just so many highs. Credit to Kadri, he's a great player, but there's so many highs where it's hard to envision those being repeated. And ultimately, when you're given $7 million in 7 years, you're paying for the highs.
Yeah, I agree. Jacob Markstrom, 6 times 6 in 2020.
Well, you're the goalie guy, so I almost want to fire it back to you, but I'll go with a B. I'll go with a B. It's a hefty contract right now. It doesn't look like the best contract, but this is a guy who was coming off a fantastic season in Vancouver. Played really, really well last year. Was in the Vezina conversation for a lot of the season. Mm-hmm. This year, not very good. And now you're faced with 4 years left on that contract. But I also think he can rebound. I think the team in front of him wasn't very good this year. Mm-hmm. So I won't put all of the blame on him. But I think $6 million for a number one goalie is not unreasonable. It's a lot better than $10 million or whatever Bobrovsky's making it out of Florida, notwithstanding his performance in these playoffs. So I don't think this is a perilous contract by any means. You just hope that he turns things around next season, and he's shown he can do that. Yeah, I mean, when he's on his game, he's one of the best in the league, really. But when he's not, he's borderline unplayable some nights. So, I mean, that's goalies, though. That's goaltending in a nutshell right there. Yeah. I would give it like a C+, only because I don't love giving goaltenders numbers. Like, I don't like giving... Like, there are maybe 5 goalies in the league who I would feel confident with paying more than $5 million a year. Maybe 10. Maybe 10 total goalies. But, like, the list is pretty slim. Like, once you get past your... Vasilevsky, Sorokin, Hellebuck, like, even then, like, it starts getting pretty short after that. So. I mean, like, in a perfect world, if you're speaking, to somebody who's running a team, then, in a perfect world, no goalie would make over $5 million a year. But, this is a guy who was seemingly proven, has had great seasons in the past. He's big, he's mobile, he's athletic, he does all the things that you would want to pay for. So I guess it's like, would you still be saying that if we're coming off a season where Markstrom is 4th or 3rd in Vezina voting, right? And saying, you know what, like, because he makes $2 million more than I want, then I'd rather take, I don't know, who's a guy who makes $4 million or $3 million out there. Like, would you rather? We can maybe get into it a little bit later, but would you rather have Markstrom or Samsonov in your net? Forget about the contract. Yeah, well, I mean, this year, right? Well, this year, definitely rather have Samsonov. Yeah. But if at the start of the year you asked me that question, Markstrom for 6 over Sammy for 2. Yeah, that, like, no brainer. Yeah, and I get your point. I get what you're saying. I just think that goaltending is so. There's so many variables in goaltending, and the sample size is so small. And I feel like teams and even analytics guys have a hard time measuring goaltending because it's hard. It's there's less data out there, and you're totally at the will of the players who are shooting on you. So it's hard to measure. So that's why I'm scared of paying goalies anything, to be honest. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. Even the guy who's Bobrovsky, we said he's been playing great these playoffs, but it's a guy who's got 2 Vezinas and going on this run now, and he's been one of the best goalies in the world on and off for the last number of years. But there's nights where he's sitting on the bench and he's got a baseball hat on, right? Like, it's a hard position to predict, and there's so many variables that go into it. So I get your trepidation, but I'll make the argument that contract's not as bad as you may think. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Rapid fire here, 5 through 9, because I want to get to some of the Leafs focused stuff here. So just give me a grade, no explanation. James Neal, 5 times 5.75 in 2018. Yeah, that's a tough one. Didn't work out. I'll give that an F. Okay, an F, really? Okay. Yeah, that just didn't work out. The guy was in the minors. Yeah, start to finish, it wasn't very good. Even when it was signed, we were like, what's going on there? Yeah. Blake Coleman, 6 times 4.9 in 2021. I feel like I have a bit of a crutch here, but I'm also going to go with a B there. Don't love the term, but good player. Yeah. Good depth player. Agreed. Chris Tanev, 4 times 4.5 in 2020. I like Chris Tanev a lot. Obviously hurt a little bit this year. I'm going to go with an A. Yeah. I would agree in that A range. He's been pretty good. He's a solid, reliable defenseman, and that's what you need on good teams. A couple here, and we're going back a few years. I was going to say, I don't even remember how these played out. But again, these 2 players were signed while Brad Treliving was the general manager, and these were 2 of the biggest deals he signed. 2 of the
earliest biggest deals. I'll say that. So Troy Brouwer 4 times 4.5 in 2016, and Michael Frolik 5 times 4.3 in 2015.
Yeah, I mean, you're testing my memory on those, so I'm not even going to give a grade. I don't think the Frolik one worked out, if I remember correctly, but yeah, I mean, just based on the names, I suspect those weren't the best contracts.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.